Hi. So, overcoming the pains of life can be messy. So, I want to take you back to I'm in Phoenix, Arizona in 2006, and I'm preparing for a holiday trip. It's the holidays. I'm preparing for a trip up to northern Arizona with a group of friends that I really love. And I'm packing, I'm in my room, and in comes a 17-year-old Virgo teenager and plops himself down on this big, beautiful, comfortable green chair that I have in my room and proceeds to tell me that he's planning to kill himself. So, a show of hands, who's experienced the last to suicide? All right. So, I knew in that moment, like, I immediately felt like my heart seized up, my breath became shallow, my palms became sweaty, and I knew that it took a lot of courage for this young man to share the pain that was going on in his life at that moment and to even have the vulnerability to come and share that with me. So I immediately felt this other sense of this calm, curious interest and wanting to engage him in a conversation about it. And so I began asking him, how are you going to kill yourself? When are you going to kill yourself? What are you going to do to kill yourself? And what I knew is that as I engaged him in this conversation, that I knew that I wanted to not be reactionary. I wanted to remove any judgment and just be free of any judgment or opinions when it came to the conversation. And also, I didn't want to make any demands. I wanted him to be able to come and just end this conversation on his own terms without any demands. And what he ultimately ended up choosing out of that conversation is to not kill himself. And now he's a thriving, beautiful 35-year-old man and has a beautiful life. What From that conversation 10 years later, when I was facing my own suicidal ideation, I knew I remembered that conversation and I knew that I needed to talk about my pain. I needed to have a designated listener that would be free of judgment, that would bring some curiosity to the conversation with me, and they would just love me with some compassion and some empathy for the pain that I was going through. So I'd like to invite you to consider a possibility is that we all experience pain. We have something that happens in our life that creates pain. That pain manifests in our lives as both mental and physical pain. And it just overall makes life more challenging. So what I'd like to invite you into the possibility of is that talking about your pain, coming to conversations with a curious nature, finding someone that is safe, a designated listener that you could talk to can be incredibly healing and rapidly increase your healing process and your healing journey, returning you back to your just natural state of harmony in your body. I'm Jesse James. I've been a detective body worker for, well, since 2001. I've amassed more than 30,000, around 30,000 hours of body work, and I've seen thousands, I've witnessed and been with thousands of souls who have come to me to alleviate their pain, and I've seen them leaving that pain behind as we work together and having this hope return into their eyes, which is a beautiful thing. Now, how I initially connected to this conversation about pain is at first, when I first became a body worker, I thought that pain really was just caused from an accident or an injury, a sports injury, falling off a trampoline, falling off a horse, something like that. Like we all have pain in our body. And I used everything from my fingers, toes, hands, elbows, and knees to be able to try to alleviate that pain. And through my intuitive conversations and unique approach to body work, this became known as the Jesse James method. And so here's what I've learned. I've learned that we have events that happen in our lives, and those events create a powerful emotional energy. That emotional energy generates some kind of destructive or not so serving thoughts that start to fester inside of our body, sometimes really in the background. And then those unprocessed emotions and thoughts manifest as dis-ease in the body. And I feel like that's where, our day-to-day lives, stress, things like that, just um, make that even bigger and bigger and bigger when it comes to the pain in our body. So I encourage, so what I invite us to do is to look at engaging in a curious conversation, looking at the origin of that pain, like when did it begin, how did it begin, what was happening in our lives when it began. I think the moment we can begin to acknowledge the pain from the past, and as it is seen and heard, it begins to leave the body. And this, I mean, pain is always leaving us clues. And it's a matter of whether we're listening to those clues, like when did they begin? How did they begin? What was going on in our lives when they began? Or we're not, and we're ignoring it. And that's where the disease comes in. And so, like, finding those clues that pain leaves us allows us to be able to dig into that and return our bodies to harmony. So when we listen with curiosity, our pain is seen. When we listen with curiosity, we feel heard, and our body naturally and rapidly goes into that healing journey. So what's possible and how we can begin today? So I think the fastest and easiest thing that we can do today is to speak about our pain, when it happened, what happened, how was it, how is it going to impact our future, the way we are feeling and experiencing that not only emotional but physical pain in our bodies. And find someone that we can openly and vulnerably share that pain with. The moment we can start to do that, we'll find that it uh, just begins to dissipate all that trapped emotion that's in our body that we don't even know where it is and how much of it that we have until we begin to let some of that out. And having that designated safe listener created allows that process to move through much, much quicker. And so the gift that we have for each other is returning to that natural state through this opportunity of listening, where we experience harmony, peace, joy, and freedom back in our bodies. And it's in those sacred conversations that they can be really messy. Like, we don't, it's not always comfortable. It's not easy having those kind of conversations. I think through society and culture, we have a lot of fear when it comes to being vulnerable and being authentic and sometimes even being honest. We have a lot of shame when it comes to many aspects of our life, whether it's sexuality or culture or a lot of things that we've done. There's just fear and shame that build up. And then also we're afraid of additional judgment on top of the fear and the shame. And so it prevents us sometimes from having that opening to really talk about and share our pain. And the truth is, we can support each other, be in our best selves. And it's through that that we begin to have hope. And hope is a beautiful thing. And we begin to have joy, and we experience joy and beauty again. And then we begin to experience harmony in our bodies and freedom. And so you don't need someone like me that's got over 30,000 hours of body work, practical work. You just need to begin to ask and develop this curiosity. Find as a designated listener, find a couple of friends, ask permission to be vulnerable. It's through that vulnerability and that sharing with each other that it not only allows others like them to also be vulnerable and to share authentically, but it also begins to dissipate and to allow all this new opening and space of freedom to come back into your body, eliminating that pain that you're experiencing. This space just allows us to be seen and heard and to know that we are not alone when it comes to experiencing pain in our body. So my wish for you in the world is that when we see someone in pain, that we become a DACL. A DACL is a designated, active, and curious listener. So take a moment now. Think about, who can you become a DACL for? Who can you become a designated, active, and curious listener for? Write a couple of names down. You might already come up with 3 or 4 names. And who would you also like to create that being a DACL for you? Someone who listens for you whenever you need someone to have an intimate, vulnerable conversation that sometimes can be painful and sometimes is not easy. So I feel like we can all create a world where we are seen, heard, and loved, and we can begin the journey of overcoming this pain that we experience in our lives. And I feel like that together we can create a world that is kind and loving, a world that is open and accepting to everyone. All we need to do is to become a designated active and curious listener. And so now, as we, in every moment of our lives, but especially during Suicide Awareness Month in September, I want to challenge each and every one of us to think about who we can become that designated, active, and curious listener for, and who can we ask to be that for us as well. I think it goes both ways. And I think that through this process, as I've learned in my own journey, and I've learned with thousands of hours of bodywork with clients, that this is a real possibility in the world. Thank you.